I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. And we sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman, because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 226th episode of the Political Spotlight. I, of course, am your host, Christopher H. Bilbrey. Kate is down in the duck doing the things, pushing the buttons and making sure that everything runs smoothly. We hope it is running smoothly here today. I'm looking to see if Kate is smiling or not, because on my side, I'm frozen and we have the spinning ball of death going around. So, of course, before we have on one of the biggest candidates in Indiana politics right now, of course, everything shuts down and everything completely quits working. Who would have thought? So I hope that all of this will smooth out. I don't know what's going to happen here. We will have to see. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm going to see. Man, this is like really flying by the seat of my pants because we've been frozen. I've been looking at a blank screen for the last about 2 minutes. So. But I just keep seeing Kate and our guest down below. They're moving, so I guess we are moving around. We are going to be bringing up here in just a moment the newly nominated candidate, Republican candidate for the lieutenant governor position for the state of Indiana. Micah Beckwith. Of course, he was nominated at the Republican convention on Saturday, June 15th. And we are going to be bringing him up, talking with him, getting a little bit of feeling about what his reaction to Saturday was and what he sees in the foreseeable future. So without further ado, we will go ahead and bring up Mr. Beckwith, and we'll see if we can bring him on here now. Okay, there. All right. So, all right, there we go. I can see. How you doing, sir?
Good, Christopher. Thanks for having me.
All right. All right. We're glad we can see you. Glad everything seems to be working smoothly now. We'll hope that everything's going to be all right from this point forward. So you've had a kind of a busy last couple of days.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of an understatement, but yes, it's been amazing. I mean, overwhelming. We're very humbled, very honored to be the nominee for lieutenant governor in the state of Indiana. And so looking forward to getting out there and working for the people and fighting the good fight and standing up for truth. I mean, that's kind of what I've been doing for the last, however many years in Indiana, just the last few decades, I feel like just teaching truth, what is truth, finding the truth. And then we know that, God's word says, if you know the truth will set you free. So that's really the heart of what I do. So, but it's definitely been a whirlwind last couple of days. So.
Absolutely. So, getting right into it, I guess, just obviously we know the amount of pressure that you were up against and everything that was going on going into the convention on Saturday. What was your reaction? One of the questions I've seen from a couple different people, and I'm going to ask you right out of the gate, is I don't know if you were aware of what was going on or you could hear the man on the stage talking when they came out and first said your name and then went through the numbers. One of the questions that a couple people have asked is, did they tell you, did you learn when everybody else learned, or did they tell you just a few minutes before, or kind of what happened with that?
Yeah, I was back in the room. Like I was standing back by the bleachers and talking to people. And so I found out when everyone else found out. And then I had to figure out, what do I do next? Like, how do I get, get through the sea of people to get up to the stage? So, but it was pretty wild. Yeah. And I'm the initial thought. I mean, the room erupted when they said my name, but I have been to other conventions. I've been a delegate myself for the last, probably 4 or 5 conventions. And I always remember them saying, here are the outcomes of the vote, and they'll list the names of the candidates with their vote count, and then they say after that, and this is the person who had the most votes. So I was thinking, well, maybe they're just listing our names with our vote count. But I didn't catch that he said this, the new nominee for the state of Indiana is Micah Beckwith. I thought he was just saying, Micah Beckwith, and he's going to list the number, and then he's going to say my opponent, and then Julie McGuire, and list her number. So it was a little bit like, I kind of was looking around, I was like, we may not have won, guys. You gotta hold on just a second. But then he came back and he said the vote count. I was like, all right, yep, we're good. So
yeah, that was I've watched that a couple different times now, and that was what I thought, man. I thought, man, it's going to be crazy if they jumped the gun, but everything worked out for your campaign, and that went well. And I heard you were on WIBC today, and you said that you really didn't have anything kind of planned. You just went up there and kind of spoke from the heart. And so do you find when you prepare for going out and speaking with people, do you prepare, your speeches ahead of time, or is that something that you tend to do? Do you kind of just off the cuff, from the heart kind of speaking?
Yeah, most of the time it's from the heart. It's off the cuff. I mean, I've very rarely do I actually prepare anything. Now, for the convention speech, the one that we gave earlier in the day to, you highlight yourself as a candidate, I did have something prepared, and we kind of dialed it in, and I was reading from that. I don't like to do that, though. I like to kind of just speak from the heart, and I love taking questions. I mean, I on the campaign trail for the last probably 3 weeks, whenever we do events, I mean, we had a couple events where it'd be 2 to 2.5 hours of just questions being thrown at me, and I mean, all kinds of questions. And to me, that's really fun, and it's challenging, because you really got to know what you know, and you got to be ready to address anything that is going on in the world right now, going on in our communities, going on in our state. And so I think that's that keeps you sharp, though. So sometimes politicians will really be very careful not to ever take questions unless they know the question in advance. I've kind of always I kind of I get a little perplexed by that. I'm like, well, what are you worried about? Don't you know the issues? And I guess probably the answer to that question is they don't know the issues. But but for me, I try to stay on top of it. I try to stay sharp, and I love dialoguing and talking about what's going on in the world with people.
Well, and that's one of the things that is so frustrating for me. I know you and I don't know each other. I consider myself to be a constitutional conservative. Last couple of years, I've dabbled around with being right-leaning libertarian. But one of the things that's frustrating to me is we see all of these. We're in a state where you have a Republican super duper duper majority, and I live in Delaware County, where a majority of all of our city officials are Republican, and nearly everyone but two of our county officials are Republican. And when we have all of these candidate events, you will have people that are Republican candidates not wanting to go to meet and greets that are put on because they don't know who's putting it on, or we'll have the couple folks over here, not wanting to talk with people because they're afraid of what the answer is going to be, and to the questions that are asked. And I'm like, should you not be able to go in front of anybody and say what you're thinking? And if you can't do that, are you really the person that we want in office? And so I definitely appreciate your response to that, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Obviously next year we're going to have a new governor. We're going to have a new lieutenant governor. The Republican Party, we've just learned here in the last couple days, and the news was broke today that the state party chair is going to be stepping down. And so there's going to be a lot of newness in the Republican Party, and we have a chance for the Republican Party to go in a new direction, hopefully. And I hope that you will be a part of that. What do you see moving forward, both as a candidate that will be running as the campaign gets ready to pick up here over the end of the summer and into the fall, as both the candidate for the campaign for this election and as somebody that is a constitutional conservative Republican in the state of Indiana? How do you want to be a part of that moving forward?
Well, I think the first thing is to cast vision, making sure that the people know what Republican principles are, what conservative principles are, letting them know that that the people running for office understand those principles. I'd love to see, every person on the ballot on the Republican side that earn the trust of the people all around the state for being well aware of what we are being called to do. And that's that is probably the thing that is concerning to a lot of grassroots conservatives. You mentioned you're kind of a conservative libertarian. And I think there's a lot of people like you, Christopher, and I was frankly one of them too, in a sense where you feel like the Republican Party has kind of left you a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Reagan said he didn't leave the Democrat Party; the Democrat Party left him. And I think we got to be careful as Republicans, because I think we're starting to do the same thing in the state of Indiana. And the grassroots movement is a powerful movement. There's a lot of good constitutionally focused God and country people in that movement, but they're feeling like they're being left behind because the people who get elected don't uphold those principles that they ran on. And so I think what you're seeing now is kind of this renewed hope. The song "Back Home Again in Indiana." I think there's actually we should write a remake of it, "Back Home Again in the Republican Party," because I think that's what's happening. I think there's people, I've gotten messages nonstop the last couple of days where people are like, I think I can come back to the Republican Party. I've got a little bit of hope. I think there might be room for me. There might be a place for me as a solid conservative, a God and country patriot. Maybe the Indiana Republican Party might just be that party that can bring us back to where we need to be. And so I think that's what I'm excited about, is getting out there and engaging those conversations and say, hey, come on back. Like, the Republican Party needs those solid grassroots, foundational people in it, because that's where it all builds. I think my race in the convention, that was the secret of my campaign. We had such a fired up, passionate base. And when you have a fired up, passionate base, I mean, it can start just with a few people, but they will work their tail off. They will tell their friends. They will go to bat for the candidate they believe in. I saw Janet on earlier. She was she asked the first question, did I know the results? and like people like Janet, where it's, I think of her and Kelly from, your county there. And it's like they are so fired up and passionate people, but then it just breeds kind of that growth, that passion. And I'm reminded of Samuel Adams. He said, one of our founding fathers, he said, it doesn't take a majority to prevail. Rather, it takes a minority, an irate minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the hearts of men. So what he's saying is just, hey, listen, a little brush fire of freedom will spread and it'll quickly turn into a forest fire. And so I think that's the secret. And I hope that we can do that again in the Republican Party in Indiana going forward.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things that you, again, referring back to, if anyone out there is listening, if you're watching this live or watching this later on at your own convenience, and you did not get a chance to listen to Micah today on 93.1 WIBC with Kendall and Casey, make sure you check that out. That is on YouTube. You can listen to that. But, one of the things that Rob's been talking about over the last couple of days is, how now it's going to be kind of a cooling off period for those of us out here watching to kind of see what goes on with you and your team and Braun and Braun's team coming together. And, we're going to have to see what's going to happen with property tax plan and a gas tax situation, and dealing with those things that have been a problem in Indiana for such a long time, that they shouldn't be a problem because we have a super duper majority Republican Party, which should be taking care of all of these issues. But it just seems like they keep kicking the can down the road, and they add to that problem. And it's going to be interesting to see what you guys have to offer when you guys really start pushing out your plan. But before we get there, I think a lot of people are concerned about maybe some of the things that have been said over the last couple of days. And so I don't want to move away from this without asking you some of the concern about some of the comments that Braun made in the hours and maybe day or two after the convention. What are your thoughts about the comments that he's made? I'm in charge, and what do you have to say to the people that are hearing that and maybe a little concerned?
Well, two things. So everybody needs to remember that, when God elevates somebody to a position of authority, there is that's authority, right? We got to respect the authority. We got to honor the authority. Now, granted, in the United States, we, the people, are the ultimate authority, right? So then we elect we craft the Constitution, and then elect the politicians, and they have to stay within the confines of what the Constitution says. So ultimately, that's the hierarchy of authority in America. But what he said, though, he said, hey, I'm in charge of the executive branch coming up. Like, he is. I mean, I think he was right to say that. Just so you know, like, Mike is not the governor. I mean, that's what he was saying. And I agree with that. I'm not running to be governor. I never said I was running to be governor. I said I'm going to be in a place of influence, and I will use influence to call people back into alignment with what is true and what is right and what is within their authority. I don't see Mike Braun as being somebody that's necessarily saying that he's going to step out of line. And he's been very clear, like, he's going to be conservative. He's going to govern from a conservative position. And so I think what we need to do as a state is say, hey, okay, believe the best. It's kind of that Reagan principle of trust but verify, right? So I think everyone needs to do that with me. They need to do that with Mike. They need to do that with any elected official. Okay, you're new. Okay, we want to see. This is not the Holcomb administration, and so I think we got to be careful not to just take that mantle and throw it on Mike Braun unfairly. But we also want to be wise and say, but you're gonna watch. We want to see what you're gonna do, and so I think that's a very healthy balance for everybody. So when he said that, I didn't lose sleep over it. I was like, well, yeah, I mean, he should say that. He let people know that he's the guy driving the ship. Mike is just gonna be in that co-pilot seat, and I'm not flying the plane. I'm just there to give counsel, to be a wise, discerning voice, to be bold when I need to be bold. and then also to to steward the responsibilities that the legislature has laid out for the lieutenant governor when it comes to being the head of the Department of Ag or Okra or housing or tourism or civics education commission, whatever it might be. So I think it's going to be I think Indiana. I'm very optimistic that Indiana has just gotten one of the most conservative tickets that we've had in a long time. And so Mike Braun's going to really be an economic engine. He's going to drive that economic ship down the path that we need to go, I believe. One thing that I just am naturally always more aware of is that social fabric, the moral, the faith and family values aspect of things. I'm going to be a hawk on just saying, hey, we got to return to right morality in America, in our state. So I think those two things are a winning combination. What you've seen over the course of maybe the last 25 years of Republican rule in and leadership in Indiana is you see either it's like all economic focused and no faith and family focused. So you had Mitch Daniels came in, he got our economic house in order. He kind of said, hey, we're not going to focus on those social issues. And in the season, I think he was right to do so. I mean, it was 2004, 2005. You didn't have the radical Marxist left doing what they were doing quite yet. So he was able to get our economic house in order. Then you had Mike Pence come in, and Mike Pence, wears his faith on his sleeve. He's a very much a faith and family guy. That's what he was focused on. He ran on that. And so that kind of like the pendulum came back the other way. And then you went to Eric Holcomb, and Eric Holcomb never talks about faith and family values. I mean, very rarely do I hear him talk about faith and family values, and he's always economics. So the pendulum has swung back towards that economic only. I think what you're getting with Braun Beckwith, you're getting a good balance of both. And I'm not going to, step in front of him. I'm not going to try to be the guy that takes over in any capacity whatsoever. It's his administration, and we need to respect that. But I will certainly be that voice of truth, and God forbid we ever go down something like what we did in 2020. But if we do, if 2020 happens and our government begins to run off the rails like we saw with the COVID stuff, well, that will be a hill I will die on every single day. And come hell or high water, you will know that the lieutenant governor is going to do everything to get the government, kicked back into right order. So, but I don't, again, that let's believe the best. And I think that's the exception, not the rule. So.
Absolutely. And so one of the viewers here, Diane's asked the question, as far as what your focus is, and I think by now most people have a pretty good grasp on what the job of lieutenant governor is, or at least a limited understanding of what it is. Within that role, what are you hoping that your focus will be? And moreover, how are you planning? And I heard you talk a little bit about this today. If you can kind of talk about that again, how will you support the governor maybe in something in which you don't agree with him, when there's something where there's a disagreement between you, and kind of picking that hill, whether you're going to, necessarily die on that hill or not, walk us through that process.
Yeah, so that's a good question. People have asked that many times over on the campaign trail. And I always say you got to follow the Matthew 18 principle, which is that's basically a three-step principle where if you have a disagreement with someone, first you go to them in private and see if you can come to an agreement, either agree to disagree, sort of in a way that, both parties can, sort of agree on. And then, or you get on the right page with one another and you move together in unity after that. If that doesn't happen, then you come back and you bring witnesses, you bring people with you to help encourage some outcome that is acceptable for all parties. And if that still doesn't happen, then that's when you kind of call them out publicly and you say, okay, we're going to have to deal with this from a public perspective. But that, again, that's a rare, that's a like I said, 2020 would have been that for me, right? When you start forcing people to stay in their homes, not go to church, put masks on their kids, mask up yourself, vaccine mandates, all that stuff is that was a time for choosing, as Reagan would say. That was a time for choosing right or wrong, and I would have died on that hill without a doubt. If it cost me my job, that's fine. I would have done it. But let's just take something like tax policy, right? I'm not going to go out and be a flamethrower over a tax policy, disagreement. I'm going to encourage certainly what I think should be the right way to move into these issues. But it's not going to be something where I'm going to say, okay, well, this is, but I'm going to fight hard for it. And then really remember, guys, the governor too is the executive over the executive branch, which is the second weakest branch of government. Yeah. The strongest branch of government is the legislature. So really, that's where the work has to be done. So you got to get to the legislators, which is what I'm already doing. I'm talking to the legislators, and there's a lot of good, well-meaning legislators that I think really want to look for the right solutions and do the right thing. And so we got to get to them, and then they can bring the solutions, put it into legislation. And then, if you have a coalition, that's really how you build coalitions that way. I mean, that's what a good coalition will do. So,
and I'm glad you brought that up. That was like a perfect segue to my next question. And a couple people have talked about this here. And amazingly, this was something that Rob brought up right at the end of the show today. And I was kind of surprised he did, but he talked about a couple of the folks on the floor that he wanted to give kind of a shout out to, people that he, has had maybe disagreements with in the past, but that he wanted to say thanks for supporting you and whatnot.
Wait. Rob Kendall has disagreements with people?
I know. Can you believe it? It's absolutely amazing. Hard to believe. But I will tell you, as wonderful and nice and sunshiny as I am myself, one of the folks that he has had disagreements in the past is someone that I too have had disagreements with, and that would be State Representative J.D. Prescott. And I know that J.D. has been someone that was a supporter of yours, and you've talked about and you talking about the power being in the legislative branch. One of the things that I've been most concerned with over the last several years is it seems as if our Indiana state legislature has been in this frame of mind where they've been less concerned with protecting the rights of the people or protecting just people in general, but they've been uber concerned with protecting themselves and or their friends that are elected officials by, for example, the bill that was passed that they passed and pushed through as an emergency bill this year, which said that, if someone's making a meme of somebody and you use social media and it hurts someone's feeling who's an elected official, that they can sue you. So if I use satire and I use it in a way, we use satire here quite frequently, but if it hurts my mayor's feelings, that now if we don't have a disclaimer on here, so he's now telling me what I can say or not say, it's kind of a First Amendment issue, that now he can sue me for this. And kind of really going above and beyond on the First Amendment issue. One of the biggest issues we had was with a House Bill 1338, I believe, which was this decorum bill, which, okay, I want to say for the record, and I've said this before, obviously going into a government building, it can't just be total chaos and anarchy. Yes, business has to get done. But one of the concerns I've had here is, if I'm going in and I'm passionate, as often I can be and others can be when things are happening in government, sometimes you need that passion. Sometimes you might get a little riled, but that doesn't mean anyone's being violent. We already have laws in place to stop someone from crossing the line and doing violence, okay, or doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I just don't like pushing these other legislations, which are, in my opinion, taking away from the constitutional right of citizens to redress their government. So as someone who is, conservative minded, first of all, are you aware of the bill that I'm speaking of?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
and what's because I want to say I am 1/3. I'm not sure if you knew this, and I'm not trying to play a gotcha game here or not, but I'm kind of like 1/3 of a person that was involved in JD's writing of that bill.
Okay.
I was very vocal at a meeting. I have in November of 2017 was arrested in a city council meeting for saying you guys are a joke. I literally stood up and said you guys are a joke, and I was arrested. It was an unlawful arrest. A lawsuit was filed, and all of that is now water under the bridge. And they were all in the wrong, and those elected officials are no longer in power. But my concern there is that this bill now creates a situation where someone else can be unlawfully arrested. And, as a constitutional person, what say you on something like that?
Yeah, no, I think there should always be that right to freely speak your mind within the confines of business, right? So when you come into a council meeting or into some place that does have decorum going on, you need to respect the decorum, the rules of decorum, because you wouldn't be able to get anything done if you didn't have the rules of decorum and how those meetings are supposed to play out. So when I served on the library board, I mean, we followed those same rules, and we had to kick some people out. They never got arrested, but there were some people that were just being they were just creating chaos and just being a distraction just because they were kind of just being pricks about stuff, and so at some point you just got to say, well, we could be here all night until 2:00 in the morning, which we're not gonna do that, or we can kick you out so we can get down to business. So I think there's a little bit of a give and take there. So I'm always open, though. I love when people shared their minds. I never and ever, especially in my time on the library board, when there were people coming in just saying hateful things towards the board and all stuff, I never shut them down, and they had every right to say it. What we didn't do it, and I don't think it's because of the rules. Maybe it was. I can't remember. What I wish is I would have loved to ask them questions, kind of like what we do down when we testify in committee. I wish the councils, that is school boards, would actually dialogue sometimes with the people, and I wanted to do that, but I think there was some aspect of a rule that said I couldn't do that. I can't remember exactly, but I think that would be fun. If somebody on city council could kind of push back on you a little bit and say, okay, well, you said this, but here's the truth, right? And the truth is this, or this is what I believe. And because if you can do that in the moment, you might quell a lot of people's problems in the audience that's watching, because
Sure,
they just may not know the other side of the story, but you usually don't get the other side. You only get one side of the story.
sure.
And that's, to me, sometimes a problem. The scriptures say, one side seems right until the other pleads his case. And so basically we typically only hear one side of the story. So I would like to see something like that, where there's a little bit more of that back and forth dialogue. But as far as the bill, HB 1338, I do think that you got to be careful if you're going to put a bill out like that. How do you protect someone's right to free speech? And
Sure.
as far as the lawsuit stuff, for feelings getting hurt, I mean, that's ridiculously stupid. And it's not going to stand up in court. I mean, like you put a meme out about your mayor and he tries to sue you. Okay, fine, sue me.
Right.
But the First Amendment is going to win that every single day. So, yeah.
Well, I tell you, one of the things, because I guarantee you that there are some people watching that probably wasn't as happy with your answer there as maybe what others would have been. But I will tell you what I appreciate about what you said is the dialogue back and forth, because I understand in, say, a public hearing act.
Is that Ryan's?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's America's Councilman Ryan Webb.
I love Ryan.
In public hearings, you can't have the back and forth dialogue. It's just to announce what it is. But in a regular council meeting, there's nothing that stops you from having that back and forth, other than most elected officials just don't want to do it.
That's true. I think it is a cover game for them. Yeah, I would say 99% of the elected officials just want to keep their mouth shut, move on, let people, say their piece, but then nothing ever gets addressed that way. So that's what I think it would be there's got to be a place where you can address a councilman and they respond, because normally then what happens, you're waiting for them outside the door, and then they come out and they're like, nope, I'm not talking about it. Like, I'm going to my car. Like, that we did what we had to do. And it's like, no, that's not good either. Like, you gotta communicate to the people and put on your big boy pants and answer the questions. And if you can't answer their questions and defend your point of view, then you're either you either are uninformed and you don't understand the issue, or you're trying to pull something over their eyes and it's not right, and you're just trying to hide something. So usually that's the case when somebody can't answer a question. That's why I always take questions. That's why I love taking questions, because if I don't know something and can't defend my viewpoint on something, then I need to go back and learn it a little better, or change my mind. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's Brandon Clover says that's JD. He won't answer calls, emails, and runs out of meetings without answering questions. That's the thing. Please do me a favor. If you do anything else with your time in government, please talk to these people who respect you and who are supportive of you, and talk to them about the importance of no one's trying to hurt. I mean, listen, if someone's trying to hurt them, that's not something that I'm behind. I never mean anybody any harm. I want a dialogue. You might not like my question. You might not like something I'm going to say or my way, but most people just want to feel heard and want to have the back and forth. And when people don't get the back and forth, that's when they then feel angry, and maybe someone yells. Maybe that makes, if somebody yells at me, I just think they're yelling. I don't think they're going to hurt me, but maybe that's what people don't like. But I just think that if we have that, so if you can do anything else, please use that's, I think, important.
And that's why, or I've already been saying that. I was talking to a county chair up north in the northern part of the state. And this guy is, it was just bemoaning the fact that there are conservatives that were upset about wind, solar, and carbon capture. Or I don't even think he called them conservative. I think he just said that there's a faction trying to destroy the Republican Party. I asked him, how's everything going in your county? He said there's a faction trying to destroy the Republican Party, which instantly I know, okay, that's a grassroots conservative movement, and they're upset about something, and he doesn't want to listen to them, and he just keeps pushing them out. And now they're getting more and more mad, and now they're ready to go to war. And now you got a war in your hands. I knew exactly what. And I said, and in my mind, I was like, and it's probably over solar. And then he says basically that. He says, yeah, it's over solar. And, they're just unreasonable people. And I told him, I said, dude, they just want to be heard, man. Like, bring them into the conversation and then defend your point. If you're trying to do something and it's a point worth defending, they'll get it, or they will. The reasonable people in the room will back down, because they'll say, man, that's a good point. You make some really valid arguments. And I guess, you're probably a little bit more on the side of truth than we realized. But if you can't do that, if you're just trying to shove, solar or something down the throats of the people, then you're probably hiding something. And there's probably some crony capitalism going on somewhere behind closed doors, which tends to be the case 99% of the time. And that's why they don't, but they just want you to not see it, go away. Let them live the high life. And so I told him, I said, they're not going away. The grassroots conservatives are not going away. They want to be heard. And if you don't hear them, they won't stop until you are removed from your position. And I told him, I said, and rightfully so. If you can't listen to the people and bring them in, and you're too afraid to actually engage them, then you shouldn't be the leader in the first place. So yeah, that was my advice to him. I don't think he liked it. He tried to walk away, and I kind of stepped in front of him and said, hey, I'm not done with this conversation.
Absolutely.
That did not go over well either. But
well, hey, it happens to the best of us, I guess. That's, someone had said, and I don't know, I was looking back for it, but I can't find it. Someone had asked about, a moratorium on the tax abatements. And again, that was something that Rob was talking about. We have all of these situations where these taxes are, these companies are being given these tax abatements to come, to Indiana, and then they're never paying taxes. And the people that are being hurt are the Hoosiers that have been here forever. And it's, something needs to be done with that. And so that's definitely, there we are. Something definitely needs to happen there. But, what's your take, or what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think that's start at the local level with your counties. I think Wells County just put a a moratorium on tax abatements for utility scale solar, I think is what it was I think at the last council meeting just a couple weeks ago. So they did it. What I've been saying on the campaign trail is we've got to incentivize good behavior and de-incentivize bad behavior. And giving tax abatements to foreign-owned companies and corporations that have zero interest in the American way of life and they just want to come in and steal our farmland is a really, really bad thing to incentivize. And so we've got to stop it. So I would start there, but I do think the discussion is worth having at the state level too. The pushback you're going to get at the state legislative level is that the Republican leadership will always well, not always, but sometimes on harder issues, what I have found in the past, we'll talk about like what's going on in the schools. They'll say it's a local issue. It's a local issue. It's a local issue. That's kind of the sort of the talking point. They're like, well, we don't want to put, guardrails on really anything that's being taught in the classroom because that's a local issue, which isn't really, I think, being completely intellectually honest, because let's just take a hypothetical here. If there was a school, we'll say, Elwood or Martinsville or places that had a history of like the KKK and racism in their past, if those schools like just, out of nowhere, they came back and said, you know what, we're going to go back to the days of old and we're going to start teaching KKK, curriculum in our schools. And they passed a school board piece of a policy, school board policy that would allow this. I mean, every single person at the State House, I don't care if you're, right, left, middle, they would be jumping over themselves to take the first bill that they authored to a podium and say, hey, we're going to stop this. And I'm going to be the one who leads the charge to stop this. And we're not going to allow this in Indiana. And so they wouldn't care about local control at that point. They would be all over themselves to put an end to it. But when it comes to harder issues where there's a little bit more kind of back and forth, or it's a little bit more divisive, they tend to just default to it's a local issue, it's a local control. So I think that's what you're going to get if you try to get a statewide moratorium on tax abatements for something like utility scale solar, which I would be in favor of. And I would certainly try to, encourage those conversations, and I will try to encourage those conversations with state legislators because I think that's actually a really good thing that the state should put some guardrails on. But I think that's going to be the battle. They're going to say, well, we're taking away, the authority of the county council. But I think it's the state's job to kind of build the guardrails and then say, hey, locals, you can go within this. I mean, it's what we do with the federal constitution, right? It's like, hey, this is the federal constitution, and within this states, you have, 10th Amendment, right? If it's not delineated to the federal government, then states are good. You figure it out. But the things that are delineated to the federal government, that's a non-negotiable. The state can do the same thing to the counties too, and then and the counties have every right to push back, just in the same way we push back as a state to Washington. So I think, again, that's a little bit down a rabbit hole, but I think those are some of the conversations that you got to be ready for. And I say this because I want your listeners and your viewers to actually begin to process, how are you going to combat that when a state rep or a state senator says, oh, it's a local control. You got to have a good comeback. Yeah. And you can't just let them get away with that, because that's an easy way out sometimes. So
sure, absolutely. And listen, I'm sure I could keep you here all night, but I know that you're going to need to get back to your life at some point. So we'll get ready to wind down here. But before we do, I do want to ask you, this is probably a hot button question for some, because they're so concerned that you're going to push religion on them. But I will ask you, Alva's question here was, Louisiana was the first state. Where did that go? Louisiana was the first state. Can Indiana be the second state to make mandatory for the 10 commandments to be posted in all schools? What say you on something like that?
Yeah, well, first of all, the 10 Commandments used to be posted in schools everywhere. So Louisiana wasn't technically the first state to do it. That was actually really laid out and mandated by people like Noah Webster or Benjamin Rush or some of our founders that believed in public education, but they knew the public education had to be rooted in truth, and they knew that truth came from the Word of God. And so things like the 10 Commandments, I think, are appropriate to put in schools, and I would absolutely be for that. And people are going to, there are going to be some leftists out there that are going to start losing their minds over that just right now, that saying that. But I always say, listen, this is not about forcing somebody to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. That's not the government's job. No, the government does not have the job, nor should it ever have the job to force somebody into worshiping a certain way whatsoever. That is a non-negotiable. We are not.
I want to make sure everybody heard him say that. So you heard him say that.
Yeah. They'll be selective in their hearing.
Right.
I'm sure of it. Right. But some of these leftists are like, well, this is what you said. It's like, well, did you hear the other part too? Well, yeah, no, I tuned you out the moment you said 10 commandments in schools. And, but no, we're not a theocracy. I don't want a theocracy. We shouldn't be a theocracy. We are a constitutional republic rooted in Judeo-Christian principles. And that's the key right there. So remember, law is somebody's idea of morality. Whenever a law goes into effect, it's somebody's idea of what is right and wrong. There was a law in Germany that allowed for the extermination of Jews back in the 1930s and the early 1940s. It was somebody's idea that this is right and not wrong. Okay, well, we know, because we have a different standard of morality, that was absolutely wicked and evil and should have never been allowed. But where did that standard of morality come from? And this is what the leftists have a really hard time with. If we're just animals that have evolved over time, from a single cell organism, and then why don't we act like the animal kingdom? Why don't we kill or be killed? Why don't we just the strong survive and the weak die? Because we don't get upset when we see a lion take out a gazelle in the Serengeti. We say, oh, that's just the way it works. So why don't we as humans do the same thing? If you're a bigger guy and you want to go steal somebody's car and you can take them out and steal their car, well, go for it. Right? Like that should be the laws of nature. No. Our founders said something different. They said the laws of nature and nature's God, right? So what is that saying? Oh, there's a God who says there's right and wrong. And he's the one that actually we have to look to for that truth. And what the 10 commandments do in schools is they say there is a lawgiver, and it's not any human being. And praise God, it's not a human being, because if there was a lawgiver that was a human being, that person would be God. Or that entity would be God. So great example, go to China right now. China, they have very little crime. You go to Beijing, you can walk through the streets of Beijing very, very late at night. There's very little litter. It's very clean. Everything looks spectacular in China. It's very well manicured. Why? Because their God, the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party, will say that if you do something wrong, we will kill you, right? And so people don't do things wrong, but there's no freedom. So we don't want to be a people who have no freedom, but you can't have freedom without virtue, because if you had freedom with no virtue, what does that create? It creates anarchy. Yeah. And so what John Adams said, this Constitution that we're writing is wholly inadequate except for a religious and moral people. What he's saying is we have to be rooted in the Judeo-Christian principles of truth if we value freedom. And I would think that everyone on the left, everyone on the right, anyone in the middle would say freedom is a good thing, but it will only work if we have some standard of truth. And truth, it's not your truth. It's not my truth. It's not your lived experience. It is not what you want it to be. It is the truth. And that truth comes from the God of the Judeo-Christian worldview. That's where this freedom has come from. So why I say it's important to put things like the 10 commandments in schools, on walls in schools, is because that roots children in this absolute truth that we are rooted in as a nation that has created the greatest experiment in democracy that we have ever seen. We have 237 years of a constitution that now is the city on a hill for many other nations around the world. How does that happen? I mean, the average lifespan of a constitution throughout world history, just so you know, is 17 years.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this is American exceptionalism. But how did that happen? It was because we were rooted in something that was not of man. It was rooted in something that was of God. And even Alexis de Tocqueville, when he wrote his book, Democracy in America, in the early 1800s, that's what he said. He came over, he said, we fought a revolution right about the same time the Americans were fighting their revolution. We created a constitution right about the same time the Americans created a constitution, but ours is falling apart after just a few short decades. Theirs is still strong and growing. What's the difference? And he comes over and he says, not until I step foot into the churches of America and I saw their pulpits aflamed with righteousness did I realize that America is great because America is good. And if America ever ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. He was saying they know truth. They know moral. They have a moral compass. And that's why this thing is working. And I'm telling you right now, if we don't go back to that moral compass, nobody's going to have freedom. And it's not going to be good for anyone on the left, anyone on the right, or anyone in the middle. So that's why I would advocate for something like the 10 Commandments. So I know that was a little bit of a long rant.
That was fine.
That's the why behind why we should do that. So
that was fine. That's one of our most favorite listeners there too. So I'm sure he enjoyed that.
Good.
Well, Mr. Beckwith, I appreciate your time. Like I said, I've got thousands of more questions, and I know that the listeners have lots more, but we will let you get back to real life, and definitely would love to have you back on as the campaign kicks up and you guys get busy. Would love to have you on and pick your brain. Maybe we can get more in policy. I've got a couple people said that, we'll talk more policy, not politics, but shoot, you guys just started Saturday. So we'll let you set up.
Give us just a little bit of time. And, I think we'll get our sea legs underneath us. And I mean, I'm excited to work with the Braun camp. I've already had some really good conversations with Mike Braun, and then also with his team, and so I think it's gonna be good. And again, I'm very, very excited for the future, very optimistic, and I think there's a lot of people coming back home again to the Republican Party in Indiana. So.
Absolutely. And Kate put down there, hopefully Micah can come back and answer comments come back to the oh yes. Hopefully, at your free time, you can go back to the video and see there are some comments that you might be interested in answering at some point.
Hey, real quick, let's do this. Put those up. Let me answer. Let me see if I can answer them in like a spitfire. It may not go be in depth. Just throw them up real quick. I'll see if I can just knock them out. Like,
you see what we got there, Kate?
Hey, as Lieutenant Governor, how would you go about improving government transparency and accountability? Well, I would say I'm going to be accessible to the people. So you can have my contact info. I don't mind giving that out. If you see me, you can have my cell phone. You can text me. You can email me. I'm going to be very accessible. I think that's the first thing of government accountability. You got to be able to have access to those in government. So that's, as Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to be accessible. So all right, all
right, good. There we go.
Are you voting for Trump? Yes, I am. Absolutely, 100%. And he's not perfect, but I want a fighter. I want a shepherd that will kill the wolves. And he has proven to me that he will just fight and fight and fight. And the guy, I'm telling you too, don't come against God's anointed. And I'm not saying that, he's perfect, but I am saying that there's nobody on the face of the earth that could go through what he has gone through and still be standing. It is supernatural. There's some aspect of God's hand on this guy. And if God's hand is on this guy, which I really believe it is, I think it's for a reason. And I'm not God. I don't know that reason. I wouldn't have picked Donald Trump personally, but I'm not God. But I will say this. I want a fighter. I'm sick and tired of wussy Republicans who will not fight for anything. And so at least this guy will fight. And so that's why I'm voting for Trump. Okay. How do you bring your faith as a guide in politics without offending constituents that don't follow the same or maybe not any? Well, I don't force it down anybody's throat. I'm not saying you gotta worship the God that I worship, but here's the question that I would ask that Diane. So Diane, would you ever tell somebody who identifies in the LGBTQ lifestyle when they come into politics that they have to check their lifestyle and their identity at the door of politics? Hey, come into politics, but just leave your LGBTQ lifestyle at the door. No, you would never say that. This culture would crucify you over that. So why do you expect me to check my identity when my identity is in Christ at the door of politics as well? If they get to do it, I can do it as well. And so my identity is in who I am in Christ, and that is going to impact what I think about politics. It's going to impact what I think about everything. And as a culture of inclusivity that the LGBTQ community would espouse, then I expect to have the same tolerance bestowed upon me as well when I bring my identity into my political leanings.
All right. All right. There's 7 more. Okay.
Homeschool parents only get $1,000 tax credit, while public school children get $8,000 in educational support. I think a lot of that is because of the homeschool association in Indiana. We've got a great homeschool association. We've got some of the best homeschool laws, but they don't want a whole lot of government handouts. They say, you ask the homeschool association, what they will say is, with the government shekels come the government shackles. And so I think there has been pushback when legislators have said, hey, can we help homeschool parents more? A large bulk of those homeschooling families will say, no, we don't want your help. Just get out of the way. We'll do everything on our own. Just get out of the way. And so, and I respect that. I get that. I understand that. My philosophy is if we're going to, if the money's going to be there, and take it and then turn around and do with it what you will. If the government ever comes and says, well, you can't teach that, well, then stop taking the money then at that point. But I think you could probably, that's what I've encouraged people to do is like, listen, if they're going to give it to you, then take it and do what you will with it. Well, what if they tell me I can't? Well, tell them, so what,
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, that's what we do with the federal government, right? It's like, like go pound sand, federal government. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I debated Mike Braun on trade policy a few years ago. He was,
mildly protectionist.
Okay. Sorry. My screen's going weird.
How can you support free international trade in your office?
Okay. So no, I think, listen, I'm a free market guy. I've always been a free market. That's been my philosophy. And I think that it includes the global marketplace. I think you have to remember though, that just because we are free market minded and we want liberty and freedom, the Constitution was not a suicide pact. And so we'll take farmers selling their land to hostile foreign nations like China. The free market non-protectionist mindset would be just let the farmers sell and get whoever they want. And there's an argument there, but we've always said, no, you can't sell out America. I mean, you can't sell our secrets. You can't use your property to hurt the person next to you. And so there has to be some aspect of boundaries. I mean, we do it with everything. So, it's like we've got zoning laws. We've got all kinds of things that say, hey, you're free, but there are guardrails. You can't build a strip club in, the middle of downtown, Muncie, so maybe you can't, I don't know. That might be a bad example. We'll say, yeah. But okay. So that's what, so I would say I'm going to do everything I can as somebody in government to make sure that we have as much access to the free market without the government getting involved. But we've got to make sure that we don't hurt our fellow Hoosiers because we just want to make an extra buck. That's what everyone's mad about with the LEAP project, right? I mean,
right.
I mean, so we can't have it both ways. If you want to be this, free market globalist, kind of, no guardrails whatsoever, well, then the LEAP project should be okay in your book. But I would say most people that are asking that question probably wouldn't be okay with the LEAP project.
Sure.
Either, so, yeah. Why do we even do business with a country that persecutes Christians and other religions? Well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think you should hold them accountable. I think you should use your influence with those countries. And if it's really getting bad in some countries, we should do things that hurt them financially. And, if I'm not saying get into foreign wars, but I will say this: if there are Americans being persecuted, Christians who are Americans or other Americans with other faiths, and they go overseas and they begin to get persecuted, I think we've got to be like Rome and say, if you hurt a Roman, the full force of the Roman Empire will find you, and they will take you down with a force that will echo across the region, so no one else thinks to do something like this. We don't do that. There are still Americans being tortured by Hamas.
Yes.
We should have said we are not in any way, shape, or form sleeping until every single one of those terrorists is dead and those Americans are home, or let the Americans out and then we'll get out. Right.
Yeah. Right.
The moment those Americans were taken hostage, I mean, we should have been in there and we should have beat the living crap out of those guys that did these to our fellow citizens. And so I think we've got to really protect and steward those that God has given us. And that's why, we can't be the world police. But boy, we've got to make sure when our people are hurting, it's go time. So
yeah, absolutely.
Last
three.
Okay, losing mortgage credit and the homesteader credit didn't increase to make up for it. Is there a better way to handle property tax rates? I'm glad you asked, Diane. I did put out on my website a property tax plan that I am working on with a couple legislators. And I think JD Prescott is one of those legislators, so he might be your saving grace. Potentially, I'm just going to give a shout out to JD. You guys may, get that relief that you want, and it's going to come at the hands of JD. And you might be like Rob Kendall. You might go and give JD a hug.
Hey,
just like you did out there.
I hope that we, over the last 3 years, have pushed him into a better. Maybe this is a new leaf, and if I can give JD a hug one day, I will gladly do it.
Listen. I'm going to tell you this about JD. He's got a good heart. The guy is he's a good man. We're not going to agree with everyone on everything, right?
Absolutely.
And so you got to see the best in people, believe the best in people. And I know JD is one of those good guys. So.
All right. Okay, we've got one more and then the final question here.
Right.
Is that Janet's next?
Okay. Janet. Micah, what about these rumors that they're forcing a draft on young men and women age 18, 26? Yeah. So, well, I think I've heard that. I haven't looked into the policies and what they're doing, but I would certainly say this is what happens when you have Democrat leadership over the military. When you have a commander in chief that gets us into more foreign conflicts and doesn't make us stronger on the world stage, he makes us weaker on the world stage.
Yeah. And
this is the consequences of that. I think there are certainly times and places for drafts. We saw that in World War II. We've seen that in our history. It is, but think about it. In World War II, you had young boys faking their age.
Yeah.
So that they could go to war and fight for the United States and everything we believed in. Like they were saying, there were 17-year-olds saying they were 18. Right now, you have men in America who are faking their gender so they can go and steal the glory from women in their sports arenas. Like we are in a very different place than we were with the greatest generation. And again, why is that? Because we removed morality from public life and especially from education. So I think, I think it's just a perfect storm of not good things happening altogether. But yeah, I'm very concerned about that.
Absolutely. And then the last question, because Alva seems to know my job right well. Where can people listen to you, hear you talk more, for those that love hearing you talk or want to listen to you and gripe? How can people find you? Where can they listen to you?
So first of all, you can go to my if you want to listen to me, I would say check out our podcast. I do a podcast with my fellow pastor at Life Church. His name is Nathan Peter now. We have a podcast called Jesus, Sex, and Politics. And so it's all the things you're not allowed to talk about in culture. So in the political world, you can't talk about Jesus, and in the church world, you're not allowed to talk about sex and politics. And so we break all of the taboos and the traditions, and we say, God has something to say about all of these issues. And so we basically just say, we go back to the word. So and we just say, what does God say about these issues that are going on in culture? And we have a good time laughing, making fun of how stupid the leftist ideology is. And so it's always good. It's kind of like dare I say a Christian version of maybe Ryan Webb's podcast if he were to ever start one. So let that kind of mess with your mind there for a second. So I don't even know if Ryan's still listening, but
I'm sure he's here. I'm sure that's coming because he unfortunately he did not win in his last election. We've got a recount coming up here in a couple days, but depending on what that goes on, I'm sure there's a podcast or something coming in Ryan's future.
I love it. That'd be amazing. That would be
so
amazing.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey, I saw one other question that popped up earlier. I don't know if we got to it. Oh, Ryan's I'm in. Yeah. So the one was the medical mandates in COVID.
Yes.
Did you see that? Yeah. So, I mean, my track record there is just, I would say, stellar. So, because I fought against every medical mandate that was being pushed on anybody. I mean, I wrote over 4,500 religious exemptions, still writing some even
wow.
To this day. I mean, people still reach out and say, hey, Are you still doing religious exemptions, helping people fight these mandates? It's ridiculous that they're even still like a thing. But I testified down at the State House a couple years ago when the legislature was looking at legislation that would outlaw businesses from forcing their employees to get the vaccine. And I testified on behalf of medical freedom for the employees. And again, it goes back to this idea of limited government, right? That was the argument that the legislature, the Republicans in the legislature were using. It's like, well, we don't want to tell a business owner, how to run their business. And if they really want their employees to get vaccinated, then, the employee doesn't have to work there. And I'm like, no, you know what? I do think we tell the businesses how to run their businesses to some extent, because I think if an employer were to say, I'm not going to hire somebody because they're black, I think you guys, again, you would be jumping all over yourself to say, that should be illegal. Or, and this is going to sound real crass and crude, but I say this because it's exactly the same thing in my book. Like, if you had an employer that told a woman that said, hey, you better sleep with me or else you're going to be fired.
Yeah.
We would absolutely, and rightfully so, condemn that. But it's the same thing with the medical vaccine, because you're sticking something into someone else's body that they don't want in there in order for them to keep their job. It is the exact same thing. And I know people are like, well, that's totally different. Like, no, it's not. How's it different? Somebody doesn't want something in their body, and they, in order to work here, you got to put something in your body. Like, and that you'll never be able to, not undo that again. You know what I'm saying? And so I made that argument, and again, it was always going back to this idea of like, well, we don't want to over extend the reach of the state government. And I think that's that was just, I'm not against vaccines. I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any stretch of the imagination. I'm against people being forced to put something into their bodies that they don't want to have in their bodies. So, which I feel like is pretty like basic, like normal life. I mean, that shouldn't be an extreme concept here in America, but for some reason, I guess it's become a little bit, kind of, extreme for some. I don't know, but.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's crazy to see how far we've come. I appreciate you doing that. We don't have specifically any time constraints here, but I always hate trying to keep people too late, and I definitely appreciate that. I can tell you, I have been doing this in one form or another since 2016. And you are the first elected official or candidate running for a public office that has ever done that. Out of everybody that I've ever talked to. So, no matter what anybody says about you, and that's the same thing I say about Ryan, is I appreciate your take on answering questions. I appreciate your take on transparency. And, no matter what anybody says, and Rob said it today, and I was talking about it last night, that, each and every one of us, unless we're the candidate, we are going to disagree with something that everybody says and does. So I'm sure there's going to be things that we disagree on, but if we agree 15% more than the person who's there now, then okay, cool. I can take that. And so,
well, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. There's only one person that I agree with 100% of the time, all the time. And that is my wife, because I have learned that happy wife, happy life. So,
okay. So we now know he is a politician and he lied, because I've always said that even your wife, you don't, you know what I mean? Because I tell it all, but I definitely appreciate you saying that. And I can completely understand where you're coming from. So you're doing the good thing there. I appreciate you coming on with us, and I'm thankful that you've taken the time out of your life. I know it's late, and I know that you've been doing running crazy here the last several months, last year. So I thank you for coming on and talking with us. You're definitely welcome here anytime. And like I said, as the campaign ramps up here in the future, would love to have you back on. And I thank you very much. Oh, last question. I've got a question from a family member. They'll kill me if I don't. Whether, or you've said you're voting for Trump. that being said, I want to get the right question here. What I want to say, do you believe that Joe Biden is currently the legitimate president as he sits today?
I think there were so many shenanigans in 2020 that, you can go back and you look at just take Pennsylvania, for instance. They broke their state constitution in order to do universal mail-in balloting. They literally destroyed their state constitution on how to uphold free and fair elections. And we certified those ballots. We certified those electors. And so from that standpoint alone, I mean, there is an argument to be made that no, he's not, because we did not uphold the state constitutions. And that was my biggest pushback of the 2020 election. You could say, well, cheating or no cheating or, whatever, all the shenanigans. No, it was just look at what a state like, and then they're not the only state that did that. There were multiple states, but look, just take Pennsylvania. They destroyed their state constitution, violated what their constitution said should happen when it came to free and fair elections. Why? Because we were in unprecedented times with COVID. And I always went back and said the Constitution was given so that in unprecedented times, the government wouldn't steal our liberties. And so that alone right there makes the argument enough. It's rock solid for me to say, hey, like we messed the whole thing up. And cheating or no cheating, we messed it up because there were states that violated the sovereignty of their state constitution, and that alone should have been enough to say, no, we got to do it again, and we should have. But yeah. So
well, all right. I appreciate your time, Mr. Beckwith. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your wife allowing you to come out and talk with us, and wish you all the best, and we'll see you around.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Right,
enjoy being on with you.
All right. Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, that was, that was Mr. Beckwith, the most recent nominated candidate for lieutenant governor of the state of Indiana. He is will be running with Mike Braun, Senator Mike Braun, who is the candidate for governor of the state of Indiana. They will be on the ballot facing off against Democrat Jennifer McCormick, and her running mate is currently a question mark. The last person that has been kind of put in there is Bobby Kern, which is you think there are issues with Micah. Mr. Kern is a whole new character. And then, of course, the Libertarian being Rainwater. And who's his running mate, Kate?
Tanya Hudson.
I don't know her, so I don't know who that person is. I'll have to do.
You'll have to look her up. She's actually seems to be pretty common sense.
Okay, I'll have to look up that person and see what goes on. So I appreciate that. But listen, no matter what you think of Mr. Beckwith, I appreciate him for coming on. I appreciate him for going through and answering the questions, even in rapid fire like that. Like I said, that's the very first person that I have ever interviewed that has done that. Other than, I'll say, Vermin Supreme stayed on, and we were just on for like hours, like three or four hours. He just went. So we ran out of audience, I think, is what happened there. I have a lot more that I want to say about this interview. I want to kind of dive into aspects of what Micah said and talk about my thoughts and feelings. But we are going to have to do it in a two-parter. We're going to have to come back and do it tomorrow because I am having chaos and craziness here. Can't wait to go back and see what the show looks like, because from every 5 seconds, the show would freeze with my face doing this, or with me doing this, or it just being a black screen. I have no idea what you guys are actually seeing out there. All of my controls are completely screwed up. I apologize for that. Here we have Micah come on, and we have a chance for more people that normally don't listen to this to listen to it, and it was the most screwed up video-wise, audio-wise, so I am so sorry for that. Absolutely embarrassed, and I apologize, because we like to put on the best show possible, visual and audio-wise, and when that is messed up, it throws me into a tizzy, and it just completely freaks me out. So we will be back tomorrow at 9 p.m., and we will go through this. I have more I want to say about this. I want to talk about the pros and the cons, the goods, the bads, because there's a lot of buzz around Beckwith, a lot of buzz. And some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's crazy, both ways. So, I've never hid the fact that I'm a believer. I have a belief in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I do not hide that. I'm very vocal about that. I do not press that on anyone. I do not force anyone to see or believe the way I do. I can respect what his belief is, and I definitely can respect what he said as far as, if somebody believes a certain way, we don't make them check their belief at the door. If somebody is a member of the LBGT community, we do not make them check the way they are at the door, and we shouldn't do the same with him. So I can understand what he's saying there, but there's a lot that I have to say about this, but I just can't deal with this freezing crap that's going on here. So we're going to go ahead and cut it tonight. Please like this, even though it's not much worth liking. It's worth liking just because Micah was here. So please, if you could show respect to Micah and like and share the show, I'd appreciate that. I do want to also say out, we do need to just throw out here for 1 second that I can't even find it. Can you put the 168 up? I can't even get to it. Look at this. Look, I don't know what you guys are looking at, but it looks like I'm yawning on the screen in front of me right now. So it is Monday, June 17th. It is the 168th evening since Dale Basham has been in office for the Muncie City Council without response. So I do want to make that known. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for sitting through this monstrosity of a show, and we will have better video and audio tomorrow. Kate, if you can, let me see, I might be able to, yeah, there we go. All right, good night, folks. I told the story about why it's 168 last night. You got to go back and listen. I'll text you later about it, Alva.